Aaron. Aaron, can you hear me? Aaron, can you hear me? Glenn, can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah. Hi.
Glenn, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. I'm not sure about Aaron, though.
Image is freeze for a moment.
Your microphone is not picking up your voice very well.
Is that me?
Yes.
Okay. I don't really know why, but
Yeah, I think when you get closer to your microphone, it's better.
yeah, okay. Try to stay a little bit close. So yeah. I don't know who's going.
Yeah, see, that audio didn't come through at all.
Come today. Yeah, Aaron was here.
I think Tammy was planning on coming.
Hello. Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Aaron, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Can you hear me? Can you say something? Can I hear you? Okay, all right.
Can you hear me?
All right, fine, good.
Good.
Just want to check audio since this is 2017 and it's not, 2980 yet, so can't be sure of our technology yet.
2980. Is that a very precise prediction?
I'm hoping we won't have to go through meetings saying, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Sometime between now and 2980. So is it dark yet where you guys are? It should be what, 5 in the afternoon? 6? Something like that?
Yeah, it's 6 o'clock here. I'll show you. I'm actually not in a very scenic place, but there you go.
It's a parking lot?
No, it's just kind of like an open area between two buildings. It's definitely Franco architecture. Pretty sure a lot of this was built during Franco's days.
I don't know if you can see the window, but let me see if this can show you anything.
You got the green. That's good stuff.
Yeah, that's my view outside my office, looking down at my car and the gravel driveway. And that's the road where on an average day, I don't know, anywhere from 3 to maybe 10 vehicles pass by every day. That's about it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I see yellow and orange and green and tree trunks. And the sky is actually quite foggy right now.
Yeah, Seattle used to be pretty peaceful. I think you grew up in Walling? No. Around the U District. You were
I
U
went to
District.
high school just near 40th and 70th, near Ravenna Park or View Ridge, those areas.
Yeah.
So it was about a mile or two north of the university.
Yeah.
It was dense then, very dense. Camino Island here is much, much, much more remote. It's not dense here at all.
Hmm. Mhm. But today in particular, Seattle is, I mean, it's 10x compared to when you were going to high school back.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
The rents and real estate prices are outrageous. I cannot afford to live in Seattle.
Absolutely insane what happened.
Well, shall we get started? It's about 7 after, and the three of us are here. And I'm actually quite calm and relaxed since I was listening to Chopin. Glenn, I think you said you were listening to Chopin too, but I think your microphone seems to be very muffled.
Well, how is it going with the microphone?
Aaron, can you make out Glenn's audio?
Yeah, it's a little bit better now. I could hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'm getting old. It's harder to understand.
Yeah, it's a bit hard, and my ear is pretty tuned to European accent English. So you speak very good English, Glenn, but it's small accent. So. But you speak excellent English, not, of course. So maybe if you speak a little louder for Sam.
Yes, my ears are slow, Glenn. Okay, you're gonna have to go slow for my ears.
Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. I'll have to catch up with your generation. Hey, Tammy, good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, you have fog where you are? I have nice fog where I am right now.
It is gorgeous, yes.
Yeah. In fact, I was just showing Aaron and Glenn this view outside my office window.
Oh my goodness.
So I see some orange and green and yellow and no cars.
You haven't had the school bus go by, or no, it went by already?
It went by at 6:20 this morning, and will drop off my daughter again at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah. So, Tammy, do you have a presencing question for us today?
So I'm curious about it. Sure. Yeah. So maybe we can just take a moment to feel our feet and our butts in the chair. Take a deep breath together. Become present. I was thinking for larger groups when we're just meeting each other that for some of you, I've done this presencing kind of thing where we're coming into present time, present place, being present, and having presence. And I wondered about, when new people are coming into a circle, if we do a bit of a presence round where we say where we are in time and place, because it's, that's something that's very interesting about our space here, is that we're all in different time zones and places of the world, and we bring so many different cultures and places on this planet in this little place, which is neat. But it's also interesting, even though we know each other well, this morning, yes, I woke up with some fog, which was beautiful and magical, and all the colors, like for Sam, are just gorgeous out there. It's morning, and I'm grateful. So maybe you can just share a little bit about the part of the day that you're in, and a little bit about where you're at.
Well, I'm in the same time zone as Tammy, and I'm enjoying the fog, definitely. And I just was actually recovering from about 4 hours of sleep, actually recovering from not having more than 4 hours of sleep. See, I can't even speak clearly right now. But the good news was, my boss, my CEO was online with me till about 8 o'clock last night. So that was part of the reason why I was up. I got 3 more deliverables today and a couple more tomorrow. And I'm being asked to speak at an event in Chicago on December 5th. So that's what I'm preparing for. And other than that, I've been listening to Chopin. So I am quite relaxed right now.
Who's next?
I guess I'll go. I'm not sure. Yeah. Glenn, did you want to go or I'll go?
You can go first.
All right, I'll go. Myself, yeah, I'm still in Spain. I'm based here. I haven't just been on a long vacation here. I'm actually based here. So I'll usually be in Spain. And right now it's about 6 p.m. and the weather is ridiculously good here. Actually too good. Everyone's saying there's climate change. There most certainly is. All the evidence says so. But it's nice still, right? So I go for a walk for an hour and I get a little sunburn, but not too bad of a sunburn. It's kind of the sweet spot, right? So yeah, and it'll be dark in about an hour and a half or so. And where I am, there's actually a terrible view here. I'll show you my view. It's a terrible view. And there's another apartment across the way, but it's actually really good. I know people that live on the beach here, and it's nice for about 2 or 3 days, but eventually it's like you're living in an oven and it's absolutely miserable. So it's actually really nice to kind of be in this dense apartment complex here because you get a lot of shade and a lot of protection. So that's where I'm at.
Hi, Anna.
Hey, Anna.
Looks like Anna's still arriving. Do you want to jump in, Glenn?
Yeah. If you can't hear me, can you just make a sign or something? Hear me because the internet's a little bit unstable. Yeah, it's 6:15 in the afternoon. So I'm here in Norway and had a quite relaxing day. So reading different things on the internet and yeah. So right now I'm really just hoping that the internet will work because it's really annoying.
It looks like Anna might be on a train.
And possibly muted. Anna, do you hear us?
And Anna Downey is trying to join too. Hey, Aaron?
Yeah, she messaged me, but I'm not sure. She's saying that she's trying to be accepted, but I think it's a public Zoom room, yeah?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, well, we'll see if we can, if you get any more messages, Aaron, if you can just help to make it so.
Yeah, I'm trying.
So I'd love for us to just take a moment to intend together on our focus today. So maybe we can, we're going to call this Glenn's glitch. It seems we might have some glitches in our connection today, but we'll just do the best that we can.
I don't think so. I think that Zoom is fine. I think that it is other things.
Oh,
Just
the internet.
yeah. Of course. I was just clarifying in case. Okay,
We'll call
great.
it internet weather.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did watch a little bit of our last session, and I've been reviewing some sessions. And I what I would love to do is just to get a sense from those who can share at the moment what we would like to focus on today. And then as the others are able to participate, we'll incorporate that as well. Does anyone want to jump in?
I'd be happy to jump in, actually. There's one rather dry, intellectual, kind of possibly controversial topic, and that is this whole question that I think has been raised even by Aaron a week or two ago about, do we make people admins, which led to how we make decisions as a group, which led to some early prototypes with some how-tos that I'm trying to float out there, and Tammy has graciously adopted. So I was wondering if people are still concerned about that, we could talk about how we make decisions and how we identify ourselves as a group. So that was idea number one. But the juicier question, and I think it's possibly too juicy, is now that it's been about a week and a half or so, I was wondering how we might, in a very present, very connected way, really mull over this Me Too phenomenon, because I'm really kind of puzzled by that in some respects, and obviously not in some other respects. So that's two things I brought in case we wanted to discuss them. You're on mute, Tammy.
Sorry, Glenn, I don't know how much you heard, but we were just setting our intent for today and what we're gonna share, work on, talk about, and just so that we can make that decision together, or choose that together, rather. Did you want to jump in, Aaron? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Right now, I heard you. I had some glitches a little earlier, but what I catched was you mentioned this question of admins and then Me Too. Well, let's just hope the internet works.
And do you want to jump in with some of your intentions, Glenn?
No, I'm fine to go with whatever, really. I mean, I don't really have any special requests about that.
And just kind of your sound level, Glenn, has always been low for our calls. And I'm wondering if there's a way to use earbuds or something to get a clearer mic take. Or perhaps if your microphone is maybe covered or something, it's always been hard to hear you.
No, muffled. And I'm wondering, Glenn, whether you might be able to set your microphone sensitivity into higher sensitivity.
Microphone sensitivity.
Yes.
So beside the mute button that's where you do it, right, Sam? Beside the mute button is a little arrow, and you can select your microphone. And I think, hi, Harry. I think that you can maybe change it there. So no pressure, and we don't need to.
What I can do.
Hi, Anna.
Oh.
Hey.
We'll see if that works, Glenn. Does it have a mic? We're just troubleshooting some, being able to hear Glenn better. And we have done a little bit of a check-in, although Anna has been having a hard time joining.
I was using the wrong link. The one in the calendar didn't seem to work. But then I spoke to Aaron and then tried the one in the Facebook, and that worked.
Great.
Wait, that confuses me. I thought we are using the same link. Didn't you post the same link, Tammy, as is in the calendar?
I did, but who knows what happens with these connections.
Sorry, it wasn't that the link wasn't necessarily working, is that you guys had to accept me and you didn't. So I think that had a different functionality, that's all. But it's all good. It's all cool. We're all here. Yeah, it's no worries.
I could explain what happened. I sent her I think that I cloned the event on my Google Calendar, and I sent her a Google Calendar invite, and Google automatically generates a Hangout. She clicked on the Hangout link, and so that's what happened.
I saw a Hangout link as well, I think. Yes.
Don't click the Hangout link.
Every single time I keep asking, what year is this?
Yeah.
It's the year where the giants fight over whether they rule over you.
That's why I say, hopefully by 2980 at some point, we'll stop having to ask, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
So maybe Anna and Harry and Anna, if you can just do a little check-in and, how was your day? Where are you? And just a little check-in so we can.
I just stepped out of the car and I was kind of annoyed that I was so late. I assumed that I would be home timely. And I'll just take my time to land here. So okay, but I'm okay.
Good. Welcome, Anna.
Hey, I'm good. I wasn't expecting to be on this call because I was supposed to be at an event, but then I forgot about the event and I remembered the call. So if you see me mute and pick up the phone, it's because I'm instructing somebody else how to do an event. So just forget me there for a minute. I'm sorry about that. So maybe I'll just stop the video so you don't have to see that and interrupt the flow. But apart from that, I'm glad to be here and joining in. I don't know how that happened.
I have to fix something as well before I'm totally present. Thanks for that too.
Pardon?
Harry just has to fix something as well. He has a task he needs to complete. So.
Oh, okay. Great. Cool.
So we were just doing a round, intending together on what it is that we're going to focus on today. And so Sam had mentioned talking about the interestingness around the admin question and how we make decisions together, as well as he's wanting to talk about the Me Too campaign. Aaron, did you have something?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. I have some things that are interesting, that I think are interesting. Yeah, I think that also with Sam, I think the admin thing is still an interesting question, and how I still need to look into Sam's how-to. So I'll kind of speak toward Anna to kind of explain to her just briefly. So, so the how-to, as I see it, is a good way to bootstrap a community around just figuring out how do we do things, right? To get basic building blocks for a group to keep on building on top of it. So, get something, and then if those how-tos don't accomplish some kind of task or need that we see, then we have to come up with a new how-to. So it's kind of like a recipe for this global collaboration, right? Just as maybe the United Nations has its articles, right? There are articles in the United Nations, but how-to is nice. It's a little less kind of legalese, right? It has a bit of a... Anyway, so Sam proposed that. I think that makes sense to me as a way to move forward. And there was a particular thing around who should we give admin privileges on the group, which is a boring question, right? But it actually did turn into this big juicy debate. Probably like the longest thread that we've had on our group I don't know, 80 comments or something like that, where we went down multiple rabbit holes about value and purpose and all of these things. But I think that it's good because it's very concrete. Who do we give admin privileges? So I think that could be a good way to move forward because it's so concrete, right? Which actually leads to the other thing that I am kind of interested in, but I'm more so interested in figuring out how we can, well, okay, I am still interested in values, purpose, but in a way more so that I think personally, from what I see, it could maybe be shelved for a little while. We could maybe put it on hold for a little while. And I think that we might already have a value purpose that's very clear just around the United Nations and the application that we did, But I think that it could even be a bit of a distraction right now. But that's my opinion. But I would like to maybe wrap that up because I'm afraid that it could be derailing us, as I've seen on a number of conversations, where it's almost something to become a distraction from not allowing us to progress further around going down this rabbit hole of values and purpose and all. And it's not even, these things are not even concrete or falsifiable, right? Which personally myself, I like things that are, I can't, if you say that you have the same values and purpose as me, how can I prove that, right? So it's, anyway, I think that that's a topic, but more so a topic to figure out how to contain. Anyway.
That's evolutionary also. Like our values and purpose change as we grow and as we get older. So
yeah.
Like we're all here
totally.
for a reason, and then we just grow and develop it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Anyway, so those are some of the things that I'm thinking, but I would also kind of put an asterisk on that, which is that I feel like I have only been able to absorb maybe 10% of the information and conversations of this whole group. So, I have, my view is very, it's not perfect on what we've been talking about and what everyone needs to talk about. So, and anyway, so that's it.
Cool. And Anna, I know that you haven't been participating as much with the calls or the group, so it's really interesting to hear your perspective of what your expectations might be for our call today, and what you would benefit or value talking about.
I mean, I'm just here because I was here like in the beginning, and I've had to be a bit like distant. I think there's a couple of moments that I was part of, and I've met a couple, some of you guys in person and stuff. But fortunately, I'm running a startup at the moment, and we're going through fundraising, so it's been very like hectic. So I am able to, I find that I'm involved in a lot of different communities and a lot of different people, and I can't really do a lot inside of those at the moment, but what I can do is I can connect different thoughts and ideas and people, which they usually are around on same or similar things that interconnect. So it's just about like dropping in now and then when I can, and then maybe connecting to some people or, some thoughts, objective thoughts, if it helps. If, I think Aaron just quoted like a 10% there. I'm more like I think now this far down the track, before I could have said maybe, 80% because it was early doors, but now I most probably would say, 0.1%, which even there is a massive range. So yeah, like it's more, I'm here. If you guys need help in any way, I can help more than anything than an expectation. Yeah. Or any thoughts or anything. I may not be able to do anything, but I'm just here. So yeah, that's about it.
Cool. Well, thank you all for your presence. And for me, I think that all of those topics are great. Thank you, Sam and Aaron, for really kind of jumping in with those specifics. In terms of decision-making process, I just feel it's more that we are making choices rather than decisions. although the admin question is something to make a decision together as a group. So, and maybe it's actually an agreement. So I feel that choices are different than decisions, and agreements are also different from decisions, but they're all in the same area. And I would lean more towards agreements and choices rather than decisions. So I just want to contribute that to the conversation. Sam, do you want to kind of begin to guide us or jump in?
Actually, I'm not yet clear whether or not there's any kind of a consensus or agreement on what our topic, could be. I still think the Me Too topic is a juicy one, but as I said, it potentially could be too juicy. And I wanted to get a sense of how people felt about that. On the other hand, it is a very relevant and timely topic, and it's one that affects all of us. And since I'm in very few communities that can connect in a deep way and really study or converse on a topic in a very, let's say, open and receptive and multilateral way, I thought this would be an interesting community to try that with. On the other hand, it is also timely that we figure out how we move forward, whether it's decisions or whether it's choices or whether it's agreements or whether it's guidelines or whether it's principles or whether it's charters or whether it's contracts or whether it's, whatever we decide to call them, they are guidelines that exist for the moment that can always be improved later on. And I think that's the spirit in which I think we're trying to create this. So both those things I think have relevance, and both are on opposite ends of emotional/intellectual curiosity, it seems. So I didn't want to necessarily jump down one without getting a sense from the group about which or other we ought to be diving into. But if that's going to take too long, then, everybody should voice that preference.
I mean, for me, in terms of the Me Too campaign, absolutely, we can have that conversation, but I don't really feel that it's at the center of, I don't know, I wonder if that's like, Sam, if you want to talk about that, maybe you call a session that's specifically about that and see who shows up. I think it's a rich topic, but I think it's a red herring in terms of where we are. Whereas I think talking about the admin question and how we make choices, agreements and decisions together is more relevant to us and what we're doing here.
Okay.
But I value other people's perspectives and want to hear them.
Why don't we take 15 seconds and see if other people have other thoughts on that? Yeah, Aaron.
I think it's interesting. I think that probably it's not the right time for Me Too, but I think that it could be something to do very soon, because I believe that's one of our interests, is to weigh in on topics that are very prescient, right? They're very important to the moment. So we may want to, still we're trying to get just the basic infrastructure to move forward. And I think that we need to get that first. But then once we have something like that, it could be very interesting to break out into a particular topic and test out our infrastructure and see if we can do something intelligent with a particular topic. But we might just not be there quite yet. But I do think that we should try it out pretty soon, an actual specific topic, rather than just an abstract infrastructure for collaboration, which is kind of what we're talking about now.
Yeah. Yeah, my thought on that was, suppose that we were actually up and functioning and actually, executing, and we actually had some agreements. And then this Me Too campaign actually then arrives at our doorstep, or at everyone's doorstep. If we were to have global impact, if we were to affect global governance, how could we possibly act or lead or respond, if any? What would that look like? But I agree. I mean, until we get this clarified about how do we even come together as a group, you'll notice one of the how-tos I drafted and named but did not complete. Well, actually, I did draft it, is how to determine who's active in the community. because you gotta, at least to do that to figure out who you're going to consult for some decision making or some liability taking, or some asset management. So somebody, gives us $1 million. Okay, so how do we make decisions about that? So just as a pointer in the Slack space, I think all of you are members of the Slack space now. There is a channel that has all of my draft how-tos. Many of them are just shells. And I think I've put most of them in the Collaborology channel, which some of you may not even be aware exists. But there is a Collaborology channel, and I've put some drafts there. And I think off the top of my head, there's how do we make decisions? How do we determine who's active? How do we even write a how-to? And then Tammy wrote one on how do we create community-generated media. So I think there's some body of how-tos that may serve as a way for somebody to say, hey, I like this, but I suggest that we improve it this way. And that's exactly what they're for. If they're not written down, then we cannot improve them. And then we don't have some common understanding as a group. I noticed that some people do think that words are too dry, but words do help clarify. So there's this balance that I think we need to keep aware of. Over.
Can I just a few words? Do you hear me better now?
It's okay. Let's just go with it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I like this idea that we could have some special conversations about topics of special interest here and now in the world, hot topics. But maybe it's better now to first look at this admin thing, etc., and decision-making process or choices or agreements. I followed a little bit of that thread. I didn't have any very strong opinions about the admin's question, and don't really have it now either. But what I noticed was there was a few things. One was this about the red button, and that was one concern, that some admin might delete the whole group. And then there was concern about the false accounts, robots, etc. Yeah, and then one question came to me was how important is the Facebook group really? It's because there's many groups. We're all members of many groups, and if we want something robust, then maybe it's not such a really big deal who's the admin. So I'm kind of leaning towards a sort of conservative approach or something, like just do some in a normal way. Maybe it doesn't really matter that much. But like, let's say the people who want to be admins and we know are active, they can be admins. So I like the idea that we can all be responsible, at least everyone is active. The people who don't want to be admins, there's no point in forcing them. So, I guess maybe one requirement could be that we've seen the person's face, so we know they're a real human being. But one question came to me was whether the group is sort of the most important thing, or the sort of group identity which can grow around the Facebook group, or whether it's more of a larger movement where there's sort of more organic group which could form of people who are very engaged and who are members of many different groups. So yeah, that's just a few questions that came. So Can you just say something about whether you heard what I said clearly?
Yes, you did come through pretty clearly. Let me make this a little bit juicier, okay? I think the question of who is an admin on the Facebook group is a little bit on one extreme. Let's consider there's two examples. One is the Facebook group admin decision. Another is, let's say it's April and the foundation comes back and says, you guys got $1.5 million, okay, have at it, okay? How would we actually then make decisions, either in this case or that other case? I think that makes it a little bit juicier because one response for one end is not necessarily going to apply for the other.
Yeah.
Yes, I can say, hey, whoever wants to manage the Facebook group, have at it. Would we say the exact same? Sorry, I was on mute. I'll say whoever wants to be a Facebook group could actually just jump in. Nobody would have an opinion, right? But if somebody says, hey, whoever wants to, decide what to do with the $1.5 million, would we say the same thing? I don't think we would say the same thing.
I think this is looking at it very, I guess, from a basic point of view of marketing, but dare I say that word? But if we had a community Facebook group, for example, and the whole point is that everyone can actually write on it anyway. So then it's like, who has the admin to process members? But then it's down to, do we have the secret or not? So I totally agree with you. It comes down to different levels. It's like, there's the money, there's the type of accounts we actually have to begin with. And then there's those who, do we just open it to everyone or not? So whatever level we're looking at here, even if we're making a decision now, it's who we're making the decisions to make the decision go on forever. But I think as a consistency, who's going to change a landing page on a Facebook page and keep that the same as the Twitter page? Are we going to have those? But then when we do that, that comes down to, it's actually a function to make sure there's consistency so that people know who we are in brand identity. So, I mean, it just comes down to roles as well. Like, what is going to be actual roles paid for to do a particular job, whether that's collecting data or all these kinds of things. And then what is actually going to be part of the community? I don't know, there's a fine line between function, I think, and that, once again, the purpose and how that makes any sense.
So we'll agree. I think that if we take these traditional structures and traditional roles, each of us probably knows exactly what to do. I think the question is, what kind of a community are we trying to create, and how do we then decide those, and how do we distribute those, and how do we make those take advantage of everyone who really wants to help there, and not bother those who are not wanting to be bothered by that. And that goes for marketing, that goes for asset management, that goes for legal issues, that goes for incorporation, that goes for managing money, that goes for recruiting people, that goes for kicking people out, that goes for deciding the website, all of those things, So rather than assuming the traditional hierarchical approach, I'm trying to figure out, do we as a group want to create something else, or do we just want to adopt Teal? That's another decision. But every adoption of something speeds us up, but then, kind of compiles a set of decisions into our group automatically. So the question is, do we want to make those decisions from grassroots principles and take the time and possibly piss off people because we're going slowly? Or do we really want to execute, go fast, assume somebody else's model, and then figure out, where it doesn't fit us later on? Over.
Seems like a hybrid makes sense, I think. That just comes out of nowhere, but I mean, some traditional ways of working make sense. But then, of course, there's still ways that work as well. And then there's others that we're just developing and creating as we go. Maybe it's different how we agree things for, say, law as we do marketing. It doesn't have to be all just one process. I know there needs to be a decision making on top of that, but maybe it can be different for different things. Areas.
So I'm going to take this into a slightly different direction. I feel that we still don't know who we each are and what we bring to the table. And that's kind of what's missing for me. So our collective purpose, for me, can, and in best case scenario, come from what is arising between us as we understand what our individual purposes are. So for me, the purpose of having these conversations, having the one-to-one conversations, is to really understand each other. And yes, I understand that there's an investment of time, but for me, it's about building the value and seeing the value that is existing right here already. So Sam, you're talking about money. However, what I think is already existing is that we already have a huge pile of collective value that is in our minds and in our hearts and in the work that we do, and that collective value is given strength and the opportunity to grow in collaboration together. But first we need to know what that is. And so in the heart of the proposal for me was first understanding who's at the table so that we can understand and use our collective intelligence to see what lies between us as an emergent process. And I think what that needs is for us to understand and appreciate the value that it is in this moment to come together and be sharing and listening to each other and deciding these small increments of what are we going to talk about next, so that we can make choices that show the direction that we want to go in. But that piece is missing for me. I know quite a bit about many of the people here, but not yet enough to see the shape that sits between us. And that's where, for me, the excitement is. And unless there is a shape that sits between us that's meaningful to other people and to the global challenges that we're currently facing, I personally don't see that the Global Challenges Foundation or anyone else would fund us to do this work. We need to see our value first and be creating value together. So that's what I'm advocating for, and that's part of the process that I see us engaging in. I just want to offer that little piece to our collective. Yes.
That's great.
Yeah, I just want to say I very much agree with all that, and that we've sort of begun this process so far, looking a little bit at the different purposes and values that each person brings, but it's probably a big process that may take some time. So I'm a little bit leaning towards not rushing it and going deeper into that. Maybe a lot will be answered then when we just get to know more about what we each bring to the table and what we're each interested in.
Aaron?
I didn't have much to add, but
that's fine. I just thought you were going to come in at the same time as Glenn.
Go ahead.
But let me also add, I am also very, I lean towards taking each step to sort of build these little connections between ourselves. But I also want to recognize that as we do, we, in a sense, we don't push away, but other people will self-select out those people who are actually looking for faster action or faster gelling of a community. Those people, and we know a couple of them already, have already opted out of this particular approach. So I just want to be aware that that's what we're saying. I mean, I do like the fact that we want to be building these steps and really being careful about these decisions and really appreciating each other's value and really building these community media. So that is, I think, a shared preference that I also have. But I just wanted to bring that into the pool of conversation.
I am in quite a few different networks and conversations, and all about the topic that's important for me. How do we collaborate bottom up globally as total strangers in order to change the world the way it needs to change. And we could endlessly discuss what it exactly would be and how to do that. But I want to put on the table, this is pioneering. At this point, I just do not know. But I do gradually learn it's the extremely small details that count. It's about how we build trust, how we build connection. And I didn't learn it at school, at home, and nor in the life behind me. I'm 64 now and still gradually becoming aware that there are some pieces missing in the way I do connect with strangers in order to have trust and to enable the change I want to see in the world. Hopefully, while I'm still alive. But at this point, I just do not know. But I do sense that the quality of the connection between each one of you and some, just like Anna, I've never seen her before, but this attracts a certain kind of people with a desire from within themselves to be present and to offer whatever they have to offer, with any other payment or reward except this desire that at least brings me here. Something needs to happen, and I cannot do this alone, and I rather do it with people similar desires and also the ability to do whatever it takes. And from my point of view, I don't know if I need decisions, group decisions, or plans, but I would like to know what's the word? Well, I would like to know what you all do and what you are doing and which passion and focus and direction. If I just know that, then I can conclude for my own without any autonomy for myself. If you do this and you do that, and I want the world going that way, then I can certainly this or that. So then I can be aligned and agree about it, but I do not need for that anybody else's decisions or agreement. So I think this level is about taking my own full responsibility for whatever I do, and I would love to align it whatever you do, hoping that we are going in the same direction. With that, I'm complete for the moment.
Aaron?
Yeah, maybe this kind of fits in with one topic that I was interested in, which is values and purpose. And for instance, I quickly, we did an application for the Global Challenges Foundation, right? Largely with the premise of how could we create a better model for global governments, particularly within the context of the United Nations, and maybe making the United Nations more effective or something to work with the United Nations. And so I quickly read the UN Charter, which it had been some time. But in terms of value and purpose, I mean, I think that the UN Charter is pretty beautiful. I don't think that, could we just kind of plug and play the UN Charter and say that we all kind of are on that page? And then there's going to be details around what exactly our skills are and what kind of technologies there are that are there. And then how do we weave all of those together? So there's going to be a lot of more details and content that we're going to have to learn. But in terms of value and purpose, I almost want to say I don't want to hear that word again because the UN Charter is written. But of course, I'm open to. I don't want to shut out that conversation too. But is that subject is what I'm saying relevant to what we're talking about now, or does that? What do you all think? Or bring up another topic? Anything?
Yeah, good enough and safe enough to try, and this would certainly apply to this proposal.
Okay, I'm going to throw a spanner in the works. I think that for me, the concept of nations is one of the challenges that we're facing. And so any framework that comes from the perspective of supporting the power of nation states rather than humans and individuals and natural persons under the law, I think all of those things are good ideas and have great collective potential to be able to have us see ourselves in a global context. But I think that there's, you know, for me, there's a shift of paradigms in terms of the thinking, our agency, autonomy, and the potential that yes, we're talking about governance, but when we're talking about governance, it really comes down to what we do with how we decide our resources are going to be allocated. So it's much more about the economy than it is about how we make decisions. They're intertwined. So for me, what I would like to model from the bottom is how we create value, share value, exchange value, and take that into the real world in terms of bringing value to the stage that we're in human development and the development of consciousness and our living systems. So that's to say that, yes, I think the UN Charter is a great thing to adopt. And at the same time, I would lean more to looking towards the indigenous ways of knowing and being in the world to be informed by a more human centered way of knowing and being. So that is to say yes and.
Two more thoughts to write on that. One is, just as nations are a construct that we might want to reconsider, I think the idea of corporations as constructs that have legal right is another one that we need to roll back. I think certainly in the US, we've taken it to the extreme, to the absurd extreme. And so I think just adopting existing frameworks without asking these fundamental questions, I think is just more of the same. And if it's just more of the same, why do we need to exist? The second thought is, even if the values of the United Nations, after much deliberation among this group, even if the values are exactly right and we decide to choose them, how we get there, I think, is important. So we could either get there one step and say, okay, fine, fiat, we're done, we're there, that's our set of values. That's one method. Another extreme method is we take, a few conversations, we actually get into these community-created media, we have these very long deliberative processes, and then at the end we say, wow, that was a pretty good set of values. But I think there's a different result we attain when we actually go through that process. And you probably all understand exactly the point I'm trying to make. So just thought I'd throw that in.
Yeah, I just want to say a few things about this. As I hear what Aaron says, is that the values in this document, which I also read through, is good enough to begin from. What I hear Tammy say is that we have to aim beyond it. So I see it in both ways. It doesn't seem compatible with me. Now, just trying to collect my thoughts about this. So I'm trying to simplify it because you mentioned nations, you mentioned corporations, and these are abstract creations of the mind, which we've sort of created boundaries in certain ways. Now, the question that I've wondered for a long time is, if we're going to move to the next paradigm, maybe instead of questioning this abstraction or that abstraction or the third one or 100 million ones, is it possible to come to a point where we can really look at the fundamental relationship with abstractions themselves on a really fundamental level? Because this is the vision I have of a new system. It's a system which can transcend the whole relationship that we have with abstractions and really bring in a completely new perspective on how we relate with information and its relationship with action and the physical and the mental and all of this stuff. And this is also what I've been working on. So I've basically been working on a framework that I looked at, which attempts to integrate information and action, and somehow find a higher level perspective where we can still use all the abstractions and we can use the traditional structures and we can really use everything, but we can find a perspective where we're free from them in a different way. They don't bind us. So we can start from a certain structure, we can move from that, and they don't bind us. So what could this look like? Well, this is of course all ideas in progress, but I see a ball in space, the planet Earth, and I see people moving across the surface of the ball, and I see all kinds of other life, and this is events that happen in space, actual events. And then there's mental events, there's processes in the brain, and this is experienced from the first perspective, and you can see manifestations of it externally. And then there's the words and the symbols and the information. And as far as I can tell, that is also events that happen. So this is the sort of, this is one possible way that this could be solved, if we could find a kind of perspective that goes right to the core of the events themselves, so that then we can transcend the sort of being inside of one information structure or one perspective or one way of thinking about it. And we can move between all kinds of ways of thinking about it. And so it's kind of similar to the integral second tier ideas also. But I wonder if it's possible to take it even further, if it's actually possible to really go to the core of our relationship with information. And this is also some sort of insights that I've had in contemplation, sort of vision that says that yes, this is possible, and that maybe the solution to the next paradigm is something so simple, so elegant, that we didn't even dream that something so simple and elegant and perfect was even possible. So I don't know, but it's an idea. I'm throwing it out, and that maybe the real solution is something so extraordinarily simple, brilliant, and multidimensional that we can start from wherever we are and use it and build on it. And if we find this evolutionary process, then we can move from there and in the direction of something where all our values and interests can be combined in a practical situation. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty big ideas, of course, but that's I mean, that is one way of looking at it, that if we're sort of aiming for something that's totally beyond the whole way we've been used to think about the human relationship with structure, with information, with knowledge, and take a leap into a totally new paradigm. So yeah, I don't even know where to go with it, but I'll just throw it out. So yeah.
Could you illustrate this with an example so I could understand?
An example. Well, one thing is video, right? Now you have video and we're seeing the shapes of our faces. So this is a language. The language of video, you see the movement of shapes in space. Now we're seeing them as pixels on the screen, but the pixels represent real movement in space. So imagine that we have a somewhat better technology. It's coming up. where you can see three-dimensionally. Now let's take it even further and imagine that we have a technology where the theory is exactly the same as the sensory impressions. So the theory is directly informed around the events in space. So this could happen with augmented reality technology, which is under development as far as I can tell. And that we could, so one image that you could see, let's say you have a ball, right? And this ball is represents the Earth. And then on the surface of the ball, you see pictures of the events happening on the Earth right now. So you see the picture of yourself. You see yourself on the ball, looking at a ball, seeing a picture of yourself looking at a ball, etc., etc., etc. So it's like infinite. So that would be a perfect integration between information and action. So that may be the direction. So it's a sort of multi-dimensional visual language of sorts, where you can have a language which is directly related to empirical reality. So that's, yeah. So I have some drawings about it, which I could possibly share. And of course, it's work in progress. I'm thinking about it, but I don't see why it couldn't work. Let's put it that way. I mean, why couldn't we have a sort of perfect integration between the theoretical and the empirical?
So Glenn,
it may be a very big simplification. Yeah.
I actually thought you were going to go in a different direction, because I think if you were talking about how we solve these global crises, and you mentioned there could be systems or solutions that are much simpler than what we commonly think of. I like those kind of questions, because I do believe, and I'm also optimistic, that there can be solutions that are not nearly as complex as people think they are. The transition to them is a trick, but those transitions can be managed. And I think anyone who wants to design new systems is already going down the wrong path. You know, these systems are so complicated, no small set of us can hope to design new systems that'll just work right off the bat and solve the problems that we're facing. So I think that what we need is a set of behaviors and a set of awarenesses that allow people to adapt to their local phenomena, but actually have a global perspective. And it's really true. I believe in, think globally, act locally. And only then can you see what emerges. But if somebody tries to specify this in advance, guaranteed it's going to be a disaster. And one of the simplest solutions I've heard, and I think I mentioned it on a previous call, is the Dalai Lama claims, and I do believe, that if all 8-year-olds were taught how to meditate for 20 to 60 minutes a day, the world would change in a generation. And if we do that, what more do we need? We don't need fancier cars to do that. We don't need more buildings. We don't need fancier iPhones. Not to implement that solution. And there's schools already experimenting and piloting that and seeing great results. So I'm not saying that's the only solution, but there are solutions that make a huge impact that don't require a lot of new systems to be created. I think those are ones that are very interesting in my mind.
Yeah. Can I just mention that everything I talked about is totally along with that? Because I think that what we really the only thing we have to do is about meditation, being, consciousness. That's the thing. So the systems themselves, we can use the systems we already got, but then we could perhaps make a kind of super system that's a great simplification, where you could benefit from everything. But yeah, I totally second this with meditation, because everything depends on it.
Can I jump in and expand on your example, Glenn?
Yeah.
So in this moment, we're in this kind of newer space where we're exploring each other, and we are bringing together who we are. there is an artifact that is generated from our meeting, which is a file that holds our identities and representations of our identities. There's data that can be mined from it. There's information, there's knowledge, there's wisdom. And we can make a decision together how we choose to share this artifact of our time together. I also think it's really important for us not to take the colonial approach of looking at different communities and seeing how our ideas of how we can change things can help that other community, but rather to look at ourselves and see who it is we are in the systems and directly look at what it is that we need to be able to progress ourselves and our ideas and to move in the direction of the transformation of global systems that I think that we all know is required for a thriving world. But we're in it. We are embedded in it. We have value that we bring, and we have values that inform who we are. And there's information, knowledge that we can share to help to share best practices, look at how we can surface the value that is existent within our community, and articulate the visions for a better series of protocols that we can use to be able to see ourselves and to be able to share what we think can actually help as a discovery process. Because I thought, I myself have thought a great deal about these topics and have some inspiration, insights, knowledge to share, ways of knowing and being that I'm practicing in collaboration with all of you. But I'm only a part. And what I can imagine is much stronger and more real when imagined with a group. So I need you all to be able to live my purpose, and I'd like to make those purposes between us explicit. And so, to take it to the small bits, we're all investing our time, which is the value that we can bring. That is, your hour is my hour, and we're all spending this time together and making this investment. And there's an artifact that we create that we can then mine for more value in sharing part segments, in, doing some of the deep work that Glenn has done in really looking at it and pulling out the nuggets. And so I guess I'm interested in creating these value trees, these ways of linking our work, our thinking, our perceptions of what's going on, so that the action of aligning is happening at the same time that we're developing our relationships, making choices together, and agreements of what happens with this media afterwards, because we're sharing it broadly, but, or within our small group. But we haven't actually had those conversations of what we want to do with our creations. And there's also the work of reviewing them and the personal learning that happens when you see how you present yourself or how you react to a certain topic, or, these different very personal experiences that people have with seeing themselves and the artifacts of their identity. So I think there's a greater weave that sits between us that I would like to see together, and use this process of sharing in real time together as a way to align, and that we can't know until we invest the time in listening and participating what the emergent experience that we're going to choose together will be. and our level of consciousness, our interests, our questions, and how we participate are all informing that right now. So you know, for me, it's about waking up together in this place of what can we do, what do we do, and what are the choices that we're going to make together to form and begin to look in the same direction together. It's still clarifying. You know, it's interesting because it's so clear in my mind, but when I articulate it, it's like, oh man, you just made it muddier, Tamers.
It's an oblique reference, but I'd like to throw in CCCs as a way to augment that common understanding as well.
CCC, what is that?
I was hoping somebody wouldn't ask. It's the communication and commitment to collaborate, which is a very structured one-way communication that helps what Tammy was talking about, that I'm floating and that Tammy's also experimenting with.
So I'll just jump in too quickly and say, you know, for me, it's about using each other's work. So I think that part of, you know, Sam, I've used the communication and commitment to collaborate, and also the how-tos. And in me using Sam's work, I'm giving it value, right? It is of value, and it's creating value in the community, to my mind. And, you know, Harry, he listened to a segment earlier this year that Sam and Fleming and I did on the alphabet code and created a beautiful infographic for me that has helped me to progress my work. Thank you, Harry. And so it's this kind of taking in people's work and saying, this is my inspiration, which is why, Glenn, your work in looking at these sessions and mining those things, that is part of what this is for me, to create greater value as a community. And I think there's some deep power, generosity, and gratitude that demonstrates, that helps to build the trust and to allow us to see ourselves.
Yes, makes sense to me. Thank you.
Okay, I'll just make another meta remark, and that is, I've always been leery of a group or a community arriving at purpose or charter too soon. It feels forced, and it feels like it's something that is wanted because we want to achieve results and achieve some action and, you know, be an identity. But I think the organization becomes more strong, more solid, more connected when we actually take the time to understand each other and really understand what each other is all about. So I prefer that we come together and form more a confederation rather than a federation to begin with, where we're loosely supporting each other. And as we find opportunity to coalesce in a more strong way, then we can launch individual projects. But to assume that this community comes together, going to create one project, you know, one direction, it's okay. Other communities have done that, but I don't think that's what this community got together to do. And that's what makes it interesting to me. Over.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel it's bigger. I agree. It's bigger what we're trying to do here. It's like we're trying to create a sort of meta structure within which all the different purposes can flourish, and different knowledge can, like if it builds upon itself, etc. It's a process which will lead to learning and an evolution of understanding. So yeah, and if it is really something bigger, then I guess we'll probably just have to take a little longer time. I mean, that seems natural.
let me assume I understand this. I like very much what Tammy said and what Sam kind of built on, as far as I understand. That we, all of us, work on certain principles, and they seem in a way to be able to align, and we all can show a certain type of behavior. Like my spontaneous reaction to the alphabet codes from Tammy. And I was a graphic designer, so for me it was just a no-brainer to produce a first visual about that, and it apparently helps her a lot. And for me it was effortless and spontaneous, and that's a very natural way that people help one another. And by doing that, we kind of naturally as well build up confidence and etc. And that way, if we keep continuing that might form a certain type of behavior. So on a meta level, we can say, oh, something more is building. This is a way to do it in general, and then we form a new culture, and that could form a new system, etc., etc. And that might hopefully end up at what you are pointing to, Glenn. I don't know. Thank you. Kind of fail forward.
So I think that said, I still think that people who do come to us and are wondering what we're about still deserve something that gives them a sense of what it is we're trying to do. And that's why I think, the more we actually agree, the more we share, the more we actually write down and draw and diagram, just as a representation of where we are. It's not concrete, but it's always something we can improve tomorrow. At least those artifacts will help people and help us as well. So it's in that spirit that I'm trying to propose things like CCCs, things like the how-tos, very, very simple, 4 or 5 part structures that just help conversations move forward and share among the community.
Aaron, Anna, do you have any reflections, or I just want to make sure the circle feels full?
I guess I don't have a huge amount to say because I feel like I need to be part of more of the conversations. And I don't know, I know you guys talk often, but I don't know like who else is quite, shall we say, consistent in these meetings? Is it just this group, or are there other people that come in and out or do different days, that kind of thing? So I guess I feel quite, from an objective perspective, and maybe right in the center of it, I feel like I agree with a lot of what everybody has to say, in part, usually more than less. And I'd say that it sounds to me like going about this in an open source manner, of how to communicate and collaborate is most really very beneficial for many different people globally. So that sounds cool. I guess further than that, I don't feel like I have more thoughts right now, but I'm sure I will later.
Yeah, it's great. It's very interesting. And Glenn, I really like what you said. I think that it seemed like we all had kind of our own interpretations of it too, which is interesting. We all kind of saw our own vision within it, which is very interesting. And yeah, I think I like what everyone's saying. And then what is my mind is thinking that I think it's going to be a matter of what process takes us there. My mind's kind of latching onto that. What's the process that takes us to moving forward? I think that'll be interesting. How-tos or whatever it is. Yeah. So I'm kind of, my mind's kind of coming back to that. But I think that might be the most important thing to move forward. Although I don't know. I mean, I hope that I hope that I'm not throwing, I'm not having a last say or something. So anyway, yeah.
I think that's interesting, Aaron, because like, for example, just for all of you except for Tammy and Aaron, most probably, I haven't spoken to you guys before, but originally when I became part of this group, there's the four of us, actually, 4 or 5 of us at the time, and it was more about working with software and collaborating people together with voting systems and different things like that. So it was very much more kind of, this is what we're looking to do, to present, get the funding behind it, and roll this out to connect multiple purposes, I guess, to ensure action. So it is very different in terms of, I think it doesn't necessarily come from different values or purpose or anything. I think they're all still the same. It just comes from a different point, and somewhere between that and open source and connecting, collaborating, and committing to supporting, I guess, our growth as humans and support of this planet, regardless, I guess, of our existence or not. I don't know, but that's quite interesting. And so where that goes or how that drives is, I guess, up to the group. But I found everything you guys say interesting, and I've definitely got some nice learnings from this chat. I really like the one about 8-year-olds doing meditation. I must say, for 40 hours a day, that was really cool, Sam.
Not 40 hours a day.
40, not hours a day. There's not 40 hours in a day, but 40 minutes a day, sorry. That would be extreme and wonderful. We change what a day is.
So I just want to raise that it's almost 90 minutes into the conversation. So I was wondering if people felt like we're ready to go into a closing round, or whether there were still more topics that we wanted to bring up.
Yeah, I thought that was the closing round. Sorry.
Oh.
No, yeah, I'm totally with you.
I have a little something more, because what's this question about what to do with the media and open source, etc. Because if we suppose that the solutions that we are working on are solutions which can be used for a sustainable global scenario which works for everybody, let's say that's the goal. So let's say that you have a goal which is, at the minimum, to find something which works for everybody. And then we're sharing ideas about how to get there. If there is something that's shared which is problematic for someone, or if it's problematic to share it openly, it's probably not the right idea. And it's okay to share bad ideas, and we can do that, and we can move on if we have the flexibility of that. And that seems to me to be an agreement about between us all, that there's a flexibility about the details, which, as long as we have this flexibility, this mental flexibility, we can always learn. And so it's always possible to test something out and see what happens, and if it doesn't work so well, we can make adjustments. And then structure isn't the problem. We can have a conversation around a certain theme, and then let's see what happens. And after that, it's open, etc., etc., etc. So I don't see any problems really by sharing everything openly. And it's also simpler, and it's good to be vulnerable for criticism. If really aiming for something great, which as far as I can see is really the only viable long-term goal, is something really great, then it's not really a problem to share it openly and work very openly. So we don't want to throw that in.
Anyone else to close? Well, I guess between a few of us,
Oh,
go ahead, Tammy. Tammy?
well, I just want to tag on to, just in terms of, I'd like us to think more creatively around, okay, here's the shift in paradigms that this points us to, is that, and kind of at the heart of what I've been learning over the last few years in terms of, peer created media, is that there is an unseen or unrealized value that exists there. And I think that it's good for us to think about, first of all, think about, in these spaces, we can create value for each other in present time and what we're understanding, as well as the relationships that we can connect each other to, as well as looking into the wider picture and being able to articulate and understand greater what's going on. And all of those things are of value. And yes, it's one thing to say, yes, everybody should have this information. Yes, agreed. And picking specific people to direct this kind of content to, and create content that's specifically directed at specific audiences, I think is really useful. Because you know what, obviously, as has been stated by a bunch of different people, not everyone's going to watch a 2-hour piece of media that we create and really get the value of it necessarily, or choose to. So I think that it is a value for us to consider from a number of different perspectives what it is to create media and to create it together with the specific intention and follow that ecosystem of potential all the way through. So, this would be or portions of this would be really meaningful to certain communities, because they're like, oh yeah, this is how that group of people teased apart this problem that we're all looking at too. And people can gain insights from that. And considering where we are in the world today in terms of data, it's a really big question for us to consider. And I see that there's been a whole movement that has sort of taken data that is driving the actions and activities of lots of people in the world, that is through using data in ways that drive economic realities, and that we need to deeply consider what that is, in particular what it is in relation to us and the data that we create. So when I look at people within our cohort like Arthur Brock and Matthew Slater and Stephanie Rearick and Helene Finidori, these are people that have thought about that, whose work has really deep implications on how data will be managed in the future. And I think that this experience that we're having right now is an opportunity to look at how data encoded within the images and ideas and our voices can be held as humans. I don't want to have my data just taken from me. I want to choose how the representations of my voice, image, ideas, and identity are distributed in the world. And I think that that's an opportunity that we have to design. So as part of my intention in being here, I would like for us to co-design, choose, and make agreements around how we deal with these artifacts of our identity and our ideas, because I think that in there lies an exploration that can help us to emancipate ourselves. So I'm just going to chuck that in there as my checkout.
Anyone else?
No, I think I need to go in a minute, so I've said my checkout before.
Okay.
But great to hear everybody else's.
Well, I guess for Anna, I guess you've not been here recently, but our standard practice is to post these. You probably are aware. So does everybody on this group agree that we're going to share this media, as is the implied consent?
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. More later?
Any other checkouts?
I just have one little question, and that is, we're talking about, you mentioned the Me Too campaign and sort of questions of specific interest. I would love to have some conversations, even if it's just one-on-one or just a few, about more specific issues at other times, if that's interesting. I don't know if we have anything like that planned, but it would be a good addition to the more general group chats. And then we could explore specific themes and sort of have like plain rules that now we're just going to try this and look at this question. And I think that would be a very useful addition to the more general group meetings.
Well, Tammy did say it seemed a little bit early for that, but I'm willing to try the experiment. So I'm willing to try and schedule something and see who shows up and see what kind of conversation happens.
I don't feel it's too early for that. I feel like that's exactly what we should be doing. And in terms of, part of the heart of the nugget of the governance aspect for me in terms of the proposal was that people take leadership, propose, see how shows up, chuck it out there. Let's kick the tires. Let's actually use this medium to be able to explore our areas of interest and get to know each other. I think we're absolutely ready for that, and maybe behind by about a week and a half.
Okay.
Yeah, and everybody's free to do whatever they think that's appropriate within this frame or outside of it. Just be yourself and bring yourself and be present, embody it, and follow your heart and purpose. And then we might meet up, and that would be lovely.
Okay. All right, we'll have 1,000 other questions, but we've already gone on 90 plus minutes, so I'll save them for next time. Bye for now, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
See you. Bye.